That's the man who fixed our car, Mommy." The little girl pointed at the CEO who had helped them. Snow fell in thick, silent sheets over New Haven, blanketing the city in white. Roads shimmered with ice, and the sky hung low and gray. Evelyn Harper squinted through the frosted windshield, gripping the steering wheel as her worn silver sedan rattled over slush-covered pavement. The heater wheezed, offering little warmth. In the back seat, 5-year-old Leia sat bundled in a pink coat and matching dress, her breath fogging the window as she traced hearts on the glass with her mitten-covered fingers. "Are we almost there, Mommy?" she asked. "Almost, baby," Evelyn replied, glancing at her daughter in the rearview mirror. "Just a few more blocks." The sedan groaned beneath them. Evelyn's stomach clenched. She whispered her usual winter prayer, a daily ritual, to keep the old car running long enough to drop Leia at preschool and get to work. But that morning the car didn't cooperate. Just 2 blocks from Leia's school, the engine sputtered violently and died with a lurch. The dashboard lights flickered, then went black. Evelyn muttered a curse under her breath and guided the car to the shoulder beneath a flickering street lamp. She exhaled sharply, blinking against tears and the biting cold. Leia leaned forward, asking, "What happened?" "The car's just having a bad morning," Evelyn said, forcing a smile. "Stay buckled, sweetie. I'll take a look." The cold hit hard as she opened the door. Wind clawed at her coat, tugged her ponytail loose, and stung her cheeks. Snow crunched underfoot as she stepped into the storm, pulling her coat tighter. She popped the hood, releasing a hiss of steam and the sharp tang of trouble. The engine was a mess, patched together with old parts and prayers. Evelyn bent over it, her gloved fingers already numb as she jiggled battery cables and muttered to herself. Cars passed, but no one stopped. Leia watched from inside her small face pressed against the glass. Then Evelyn heard the sound of tires slowing behind her. She turned to see a sleek black SUV pull up behind the sedan, its headlights cutting through the falling snow. The driver's door opened, and a tall man stepped out, composed and confident, dressed in a long dark coat and black gloves. Snow dusted his shoulders as he approached. "You need a hand," he asked, his voice calm. "I think it's the battery or the starter." "I'm not sure," she replied hesitantly. He nodded and moved past her without another word. He studied the engine, then reached into his coat and pulled out a portable jumper, sleek and clearly high-end. In moments, he had it connected. The engine coughed, then roared back to life. Evelyn blinked, stunned. He closed the hood with a quiet thud, brushing snow from his gloves. "Let it run a few minutes before you drive." "Thank you," she said breathlessly. "Really, thank you?" He nodded once, glancing at the back seat. Leia waved from behind the glass, her mittened hand pressed against it. He offered a soft smile. "Road slick, drive safe, keep her warm." Then he turned and walked away. Evelyn watched frozen as he stepped back into the SUV and disappeared into the storm. She stood there, snow gathering on her shoulders, her heart thudding. "Mommy," she heard. She turned to see Leia had rolled the window down and leaned out, her cheeks flushed pink. "That man's like a superhero, just like in my movies." Evelyn let out a shaky laugh. "Yeah," she murmured, her eyes still on the road. "Maybe he is." She climbed back in, cranked the heat, and glanced once more in the mirror at the quiet road, the snow, and the empty space where a stranger had appeared, then vanished. And somewhere deep inside she felt something small and unexpected hope. The next morning, the air inside the office building buzzed with quiet urgency. Evelyn Harper walked briskly down the carpeted hallway, her fingers clutching a folder of neatly printed agendas. Her golden ponytail swung behind her as she made her way toward the executive conference room on the 12th floor. She had been asked to assist with setting up for the quarterly board meeting, a task she normally found routine, almost comforting. But today her thoughts were a blur. The events from the previous morning kept replaying in her head: the broken-down car, the snow, the man with the calm voice and black gloves. Who was he? Why had he helped so silently and then disappeared like he had never been there at all? Evelyn pushed open the heavy glass door of the conference room, the hinges whispering as it closed behind her. She quickly moved toward the end of the long table, arranging the documents in front of each leather chair. The room slowly began to fill with department heads and executives, each exchanging polite greetings. Evelyn kept her gaze down, focused on her task, until a sudden hush fell over the room. It was subtle, but immediate. A few people shifted in their seats, and then she saw him, the man from yesterday. He walked in calmly, his posture straight, his expression composed. Still wearing a dark coat over his tailored suit, he made his way to the head of the table with effortless confidence. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. It couldn't be, but it was. He sat down. A senior manager leaned toward the woman beside him and whispered, "That's Nathaniel Crawford, the new CEO." Evelyn stood frozen, the last of the folders still in her hands. Her eyes locked onto his face. Nathaniel Crawford. So that was his name. He was the man who had knelt in the snow to fix a stranger's car, the man who had driven away without asking for thanks. Nathaniel glanced up just briefly. Their eyes met. Evelyn saw the smallest flicker of recognition in his gaze, but it was gone in an instant. He looked away, his expression unreadable, and began speaking to one of the directors seated to his right. Evelyn forced herself to move, placing the final folder down with trembling hands. She tried to appear calm, tried to steady her breathing. Her cheeks burned with a mix of confusion and something dangerously close to embarrassment. What were the chances? She stepped back quietly, standing against the far wall with the other assistants. Her heart pounded as she watched him lead the meeting, confident, articulate, and respected. There was no trace of yesterday's snow-covered streets in his voice, no sign of the man who had offered help without expecting anything in return. But she knew it was him, and he knew she knew. Evelyn kept her eyes low for the rest of the meeting, answering only when spoken to. Nathaniel never looked at her again, not directly. When the meeting ended and people began to file out, Evelyn lingered by the door to collect the leftover documents. As Nathaniel passed by, he slowed just slightly, only enough to say under his breath, almost too low to hear, "Glad the car made it through the rest of the day." Evelyn looked up startled, but by the time she raised her eyes, he was already walking away, his steps quiet and steady down the hall. She stood there in silence, her hand pressed gently against the folder to steady it, unsure if she had imagined it. Outside the windows, snow was beginning to fall again. After the board meeting, Evelyn tried her best to return to routine. She filed paperwork, updated schedules, and responded to department emails, doing anything to keep her mind from drifting back to the man who had fixed her car, and then appeared without surprise at the head of the conference table. Nathaniel Crawford never mentioned that morning, not in passing, not in meetings, not even when their paths crossed, though they often did. And now he was her boss. They shared silent elevator rides and exchanged polite nods in the hallway. Once Evelyn caught him glancing her way in the cafeteria line. He looked down at his phone almost instantly, but she had seen it, that same quiet recognition from the snowy roadside. There was no favoritism, no words that crossed a line. Yet something unspoken hung between them, an invisible thread humming beneath the rhythm of their daily routines. It rattled Evelyn more than she liked to admit. That weekend, as snow drifted down again in slow spirals, Evelyn bundled Leia into her coat and boots for a quick grocery run. She tried not to think about the overdue bills or the car's rattling exhaust. Just a few essentials and a bit of fresh air, she thought. "Can we look at the toys, Mommy?" Leia asked, hopping beside her, her pink dress peeked out from under her coat already flecked with snow. "Only if we're quick," Evelyn said, managing a tired smile. They walked side by side through the icy wind, heading to the store a few blocks from their apartment. The cold bit through their coats, and Evelyn's fingers ached even through her gloves. As they neared the entrance, Evelyn noticed a man standing near the curb, tall, back straight, his collar turned up against the wind. It was Nathaniel. He stood beside a parked car, scrolling his phone, wearing the same dark coat from the office. Before Evelyn could react, Leia gasped and broke into a joyful skip. "That's the man who fixed our car, Mommy!" Her voice rang out above the crunch of snow and passing cars. Nathaniel looked up. He crouched slightly as Leia reached him, her tiny arms clutching a pink penguin plush. "Well, hello there," he said warmly. Evelyn hurried over, her cheeks flushed. "Leia, slow down." She met Nathaniel's eyes, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. She remembers everything." He smiled, not a smirk, not amusement, just kindness. She has a good memory. I never properly thanked you, Evelyn said, for the other day. You're welcome, he replied simply. They stood in silence as snow fell around them, dusting their shoulders and hair. Then Nathaniel glanced toward the street. My ride's here? He gave Leah a small wave before stepping into a black car and disappearing into traffic. Inside the store, Evelyn tried to refocus. She and Leah picked up bread pasta and a few canned goods. Passing the toy aisle, Leah stopped in front of a small display and pointed to a pink stuffed bear with sparkly ears. Can I have this one? She asked. Evelyn crouched, checked the price, and sighed. Not today, sweetheart. Maybe next time. Leah nodded, brave and quiet. Outside, Nathaniel, who had lingered longer than necessary, had seen everything. His expression was unreadable. He turned and walked away. 10 minutes later, Evelyn and Leah stepped back into the snowy street. Wind tugged at their coats as they approached the silver sedan, now lightly blanketed in white. And then Evelyn stopped. A brown paper bag was looped over the driver's side mirror. She stared, then slowly reached up and took it down. Inside were the pink bear with sparkly ears, a small bag of groceries, a couple of sandwiches, instant noodles, a small carton of milk, and 2 pairs of wool gloves, one adult-sized, one child-sized, in pink. At the bottom, folded neatly, was a note, "For a warmer winter day, a man who once fixed your car." No name, no title, just that. Evelyn stood still, holding the bag close. Leah peeked inside and squealed, "Mommy, it's the one I wanted." She hugged the bear tightly, her joy slicing through the cold like sunshine. Evelyn didn't speak, her throat-closed eyes stinging. She looked down the street, empty now. No black car, no tall figure, but she didn't need to see him to know. And in that quiet moment, with snow falling soft and steady, Evelyn felt something settle into her chest. Gratitude. And maybe just a little bit more. After the grocery store, Evelyn didn't say a word about the note. Not to Leah, not to anyone. She folded it gently, tucked it into the drawer beside her bed, and left it there like a secret pressed between the pages of her life. She never saw Nathaniel leave the bag, never heard a car door or footsteps, but she knew. Somehow, the silence of the gesture made it even more powerful. At work, everything appeared unchanged. Nathaniel remained composed, the poised CEO polite in hallways, sharp in meetings, never crossing any line. Evelyn followed his lead, keeping things professional, conversations brief, and avoiding any trace of familiarity. She didn't want to assume, or worse, hope. Still, she noticed small things. There was the slight pause when she entered a room, and the way he lingered in conversation if she was near. One afternoon in the cafeteria, she found an extra honey packet by the tea station, her favorite, rarely stocked. She didn't ask who left it. So when he approached her after a staff meeting on Thursday, she was surprised. He stood beside her at the refreshment table holding a paper cup. "There's a little dinner gathering this Saturday, just a few people from the office," he said casually. "You should come." Evelyn blinked. "Me?" He nodded. "Just dinner. A chance to talk outside of emails and deadlines." The way he said it, light, easy, and without pressure, made her feel safe enough to say yes. On Saturday evening, Evelyn arrived at the restaurant. She expected something formal, quiet, with white tablecloths and business talk. But what she found was the opposite. It was a family-run Italian trattoria nestled on a quiet corner with fogged windows and the smell of roasted garlic drifting out each time the door opened. Inside were mismatched chairs, vintage wine bottles on shelves, and soft Italian music playing from a speaker in the corner. It had warmth and history. Nathaniel was already there, seated in a corner booth, wearing a dark sweater instead of his usual suit. He stood and smiled, genuine, not corporate. "I used to sit right over there," he said, gesturing to a table near the kitchen. "My mom waited tables here when I was a kid. The owners let me hang out in the back while she worked double shifts." Evelyn's eyes softened. She took the seat across from him. "You've been coming here long." "Not since she passed," he replied gently. But tonight felt like the right time. Over steaming pasta and garlic bread, they talked not about work, but about life, childhood struggles, and regrets. "I used to think being poor was something you had to hide," Evelyn admitted, "like if you stayed quiet, it wouldn't follow you into adulthood." Nathaniel nodded. "My mom cleaned offices in the morning and worked here at night. Winters were brutal. Sometimes we had to choose between heat or groceries." Evelyn's throat tightened. She thought of the nights she'd driven on empty counting quarters for gas, the evenings Leah had gone to bed with a special snack night instead of dinner. "I always thought people like you CEOs grew up in another world," she whispered. Nathaniel held her gaze. "I didn't become a CEO to forget where I came from. I became one so I'd never forget." A quiet settled between them, a deep, unspoken understanding. Nathaniel leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. "I didn't help you that day to impress anyone," he said. "I helped because I remember wishing someone would help my mother even just once, but no one ever did." Evelyn blinked fast, holding back tears. Something inside her shifted. He hadn't always stood at the top. He had once been in the cold in the struggle. And in that moment, the space between them vanished. She wasn't just his assistant, and he wasn't just the CEO. They were two people who had known hardship and who had found something rare and quiet in each other. By the time they left, snow had begun to fall again, soft and silent. Nathaniel held the door open, and as Evelyn stepped out into the night, she turned to look back at the little booth by the window. The warm light, the sound of laughter inside. She didn't know what would happen next, didn't dare guess where this fragile thread might lead. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. Something between Evelyn and Nathaniel had shifted after that quiet dinner. Not in ways the world could see, not yet, but in the pauses between words and the glances that lingered too long, and in the way he always seemed to slow his steps when she was near. They never said anything outright. Evelyn made sure of that. She stayed professional, never letting her smile stretch too far or her gaze linger in the office. But after hours, there were walks down quiet streets, coffee shared in parked cars, and long conversations that felt like home. And there was Leah. She adored Nathaniel with the kind of wide-eyed innocence only a 5-year-old could offer. She started calling him Uncle Nate all on her own, and he never corrected her. He picked her up when Evelyn worked late, brought books about silly animals, and learned her hot chocolate preference, cinnamon, not marshmallows. One Sunday, they spent the afternoon building a lopsided snow fort in the park. It collapsed within minutes, and they all fell laughing. Evelyn hadn't laughed like that in years. In that moment, they weren't two different worlds. They were a family just not yet official. But not everyone saw it that way. Cynthia Monroe, head of HR, noticed everything. She saw Nathaniel pause when Evelyn entered a room. She saw the softness in his tone when he spoke to her. At first, she dismissed it as a flicker of interest, maybe even pity. Then came the whispers. Evelyn and Nathaniel were seen leaving the building around the same time. Someone claimed to have spotted them having coffee on a Saturday. Another saw him buying a pink backpack at a toy store. Cynthia didn't start the rumors, but she didn't stop them either. She let them grow, nurturing them even. "She's smart," someone said near the copier. "I heard she used to struggle single mom and all. Guess she found a shortcut. From admin to the CEO's favorite. That's one way to move up." The rumors slid through the office like a cold draft, quiet, chilling, and impossible to ignore. Evelyn felt it quickly. Co-workers who once smiled now avoided eye contact. Lunch tables that used to save her a seat were suddenly full. Conversation stopped when she walked into a room. Someone once left a cruel message on her notepad and tore it out before she arrived, but the imprint was still there. She saw it. Cynthia stayed untouchable, her smirk always just polite enough to avoid blame. Evelyn tried to push through, keep her head down, and do her job, but it hurt. Worse than the judgment was the fear that it would hurt Nathaniel. He had fought too hard to be where he was. She couldn't be the reason people doubted him. Late one night, long after most had gone home, Evelyn knocked on his office door. He looked up, surprised. "I need to talk," she said quietly. He stood. "Of course," What's wrong?" She stepped in, closing the door behind her. "They're talking," she said. "Not just whispers anymore. People think I'm using you, that I traded my job for favors." Nathaniel's jaw clenched. "That's absurd." "It doesn't matter if it's absurd," she said. "It matters that they believe it. And I can't keep walking into work pretending it doesn't affect me or you. You haven't done anything wrong." "No," she said softly. "But this might still hurt you, and I can't live with that." He looked at her like he already knew what she was going to say. "I'm going to resign." "No," he said quickly, his voice low. "I have to," she whispered. "I can't be the shadow that follows you into every meeting. You deserve better." He was silent. He didn't argue, didn't try to stop her again. But the look in his eyes, something sacred slipping through his fingers, nearly undid her. She turned before he could see her cry, and walked out of his office that night with her heart in pieces. One hand on the door, the other pressed to her chest. Behind her, Nathaniel stood motionless, surrounded by silence, holding only the echo of what might have been. The ballroom was dressed in soft gold light and quiet elegance. Round tables wrapped in white linen dotted the floor, each centerpiece a gentle swirl of pine cones, fairy lights and winter roses. A string quartet played in the corner as employees mingled in formal wear laughter, blending with the gentle clinking of glasses. It was the company's annual employee recognition gala, and despite submitting her resignation, Evelyn had decided to attend, not for the accolades, not for closure, but because of a promise. Leah had been counting down the days, thrilled at the idea of dressing up, seeing Uncle Nate, and eating fancy food that wasn't from a box. Evelyn had chosen a simple navy blue dress, her golden hair twisted back neatly. Leah, radiant in her beloved pink dress and little sparkly shoes, held her hand tightly as they entered the hall. No one greeted Evelyn the way they used to. The whispers had not fully died down. A few glances lingered longer than necessary, but she ignored them. Tonight she was here for Leah. They found seats near the back, away from the spotlight. Leah swung her legs happily, sipping sparkling apple juice and pointing out the glittering lights above. At the front of the room, the MC tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our CEO, Mr. Nathaniel Crawford." Applause followed, polite and respectful. Evelyn froze in place, her eyes lifting toward the stage as Nathaniel stepped into view. He looked calm, composed, the way he always did in public. But there was something behind his eyes tonight, something quieter. He began his speech with ease, thanking departments, commending milestones, and acknowledging achievements. Evelyn lowered her gaze, her heart thudding quietly beneath her ribs. Then it happened. Without warning, Leah slid off her chair. "Leah, wait," Evelyn whispered, reaching for her. But the child had already taken off across the floor, weaving between tables like a breeze in motion. Gasps rippled as the little girl climbed the steps of the stage, her pink dress fluttering, her cheeks flushed with determination. Nathaniel turned, startled, just as she reached him. She grabbed the hem of his jacket, pulled the microphone closer, and with the clarity only children seem to find, declared to the entire room, "This is the Superman who fixed the car for Mom and me. Mom and I miss him so much." A stunned silence fell over the ballroom. No one moved. No one whispered, just stillness. Evelyn froze, heat rushing to her cheeks, every nerve alive with shock and disbelief. Her hands trembled in her lap, her eyes wide, her lips parted. Nathaniel didn't flinch. He looked down at Leah, and something soft and unmistakably real crossed his face. He knelt beside her, wrapping her in a gentle hug. The room stayed silent, watching this unscripted moment unfold. He stood Leah's small hand still in his and turned back to the microphone. His voice when he spoke was quieter now, warmer. "And that's the little girl who reminded me," he paused, swallowing, "why we're here, to be kind, even when no one's watching." A beat passed. Then slowly the applause began, soft at first, then growing real. Evelyn could hardly see through the tears that welled in her eyes. She watched as Leah beamed, still holding Nathaniel's hand, waving to the crowd as if she had done nothing unusual at all. But something had shifted. The whispers were gone, replaced by something else, something beginning. The morning after the gala, the company's internal network was buzzing. Someone had uploaded a short video from the night before, grainy, shaky, and full of heart. In the clip, Leia stood center stage in her pink dress, her tiny voice ringing through the microphone. "This is the Superman who fixed the car for Mom and me. Mom and I miss him so much." Then came Nathaniel's reply, holding her hand with quiet strength. "And that's the little girl who reminded me why we're here, to be kind even when no one's watching." The video spread fast. By lunchtime, department heads were forwarding it to their teams. Employees who once kept their distance from Evelyn now watched in silence. Some watched with softened expressions, others with visible regret. Something had cracked open, and from that crack came empathy. The board of directors scheduled a private meeting 2 days later. There were concerns, of course. The personal entanglements of a CEO, especially with an employee, always raised eyebrows. But after reviewing the facts, the conclusion was unanimous. There had been no breach of conduct. Nathaniel Crawford had not used his position to manipulate, pressure, or promote. If anything, he had conducted himself with restraint. The matter was closed with no action required except one Cynthia Monroe. Her part in the rumors, once whispered, was now fully exposed. Several employees came forward recalling things she had said, texts she had sent, and emails she had implied. She was formally reprimanded by the board. Her influence within the company, once solid, began to unravel under the weight of her own bitterness. She kept her position for now, but the damage was done. Evelyn returned to work the following Monday, not with her resignation, but with quiet dignity. Colleagues who had once avoided her offered hesitant greetings, some even apologies. She accepted them all with grace, though her trust came more slowly. But the real shift happened later that week. It was evening when Nathaniel knocked on her apartment door. Leia had already fallen asleep on the couch, her toy bear curled against her cheek. Evelyn opened the door and found him standing there, not in a suit, not with formal words, but simply there. He stepped inside, looking around the familiar space, the coat hooks crowded with scarves, the kitchen still warm from dinner. No pretense, no distance, just him. "I've said a lot of things over the past few months," he began, some carefully worded, some not said at all. She stood across from him, hands folded tightly. "This time I want to be clear," he said. "This isn't about a gesture or a holiday dinner or even the day I fixed your car." He took a deep breath. "This time, it's about a home, a real one. Not just for me, not just for you, but for all three of us." Evelyn's throat tightened. She shook her head, tears already welling. "You don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted gently. "I want to be there in the morning when Leia climbs into bed and asks for pancakes. I want to stand beside you when things get hard and when things are beautiful. I want a life with you, all of it the ordinary and the sacred." Her breath caught. The tears spilled over, and before she could say another word, she stepped into his arms. Nathaniel held her tightly, the kind of embrace that says, "You're home now." Outside the window, snow had begun to fall again, but inside, everything was finally blessedly warm. 1 year later, the wind outside whispered through bare trees, brushing against the windows with soft, wintry sighs. Snow had started falling again, gentle and steady, blanketing the quiet suburb in white. But inside the little house tucked just outside New Haven, there was warmth and laughter. The old silver sedan, the one that once stalled in the snow and brought two lives colliding, no longer roamed the streets. Instead, it sat proudly outside Evelyn's bakery, lovingly cleaned its hood adorned with flowers in spring and fairy lights in winter. Children loved to climb inside and pretend they were going on magical journeys. Locals called it the love car. The bakery named Leia's Table had become a neighborhood favorite. People came not only for the flaky croissants and warm cinnamon rolls, but for the feeling that lingered in the air, hope. It was Evelyn's touch in every corner, every pastry, every smile. Nathaniel had helped fund the shop quietly without fanfare, but he let her lead, let her build it her way. It was her dream after all. He just wanted to help it rise. Their home not far from the bakery was modest but filled with life. A garden bloomed in the back, and a wooden swing creaked cheerfully beneath the old maple tree. Leah had claimed the attic as her castle filled with books, pink blankets, and imagination. That morning, Evelyn stood at the kitchen counter pouring hot water over loose-leaf tea. The smell of ginger and honey curled through the air. Nathaniel wrapped his arms around her from behind, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. Outside through the window they watched Leah bounce down the front steps, dressed in her signature pink dress and an oversized coat. She still wore the same woolen gloves he had once left in a paper bag. They were patched now, a little frayed, but she wouldn't part with them for anything. She spotted the elderly neighbor walking her dog across the street and waved enthusiastically. Then, with the kind of joy only a 5-year-old could possess, she shouted for the whole block to hear, "My daddy is the man who fixed our car." The neighbor chuckled, lifting a gloved hand in return. Evelyn laughed softly, shaking her head. She's still telling that story. Nathaniel tightened his arms around her waist. It's a good story. She turned slightly, meeting his eyes. Is it? He leaned down, his voice a whisper in her ear. I fixed your car that day, but you fixed my heart. Evelyn's eyes shimmered, her smile deepening as she turned fully to face him. Outside, the snow continued to fall gently, covering rooftops, gardens, and parked cars. But in the little kitchen, filled with the scent of tea and the sound of a little girl's laughter echoing down the street, winter had lost its chill. And somewhere in the stillness, spring had quietly arrived. A happy ending full of warmth and the kind of love that grows in silence, then stays forever. Thank you for watching this heartwarming journey of Evelyn Little Leah and the man who once fixed their car, Nathaniel Crawford. This wasn't just a story about a broken-down vehicle on a snowy road. It was a story about healing hearts building a home and love that bridges every distance. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that quiet kindness can change a life, hit that hype button to show your support and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more emotional, uplifting tales that warm your soul and stay with you long after they end. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful. Music